Man is terrified seeing little girl in pajamas crying in the middle of the road at night. I thought the pattern of my life was set in stone, that I already knew what was before me. I was 49 years old when I discovered that fate and the future are as fluid as water and I was adrift on a current. I'd been a widower for 10 years now and raised my daughter Hannah alone. She'd been the center of my world, but now she'd left to shape her own life. As I drove home that night, I was thinking about how much I missed her, and that was when I saw the child. A little girl was standing in the middle of the road, lit up suddenly by my headlights. I only had time to hit the brakes and swerve. Thank God I missed her. I fetched up centimeters from the shoulder of the road in another parked car. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it was going to leap out of my chest. I tore the door open and ran to the middle of the road where I'd seen the child. She was there and safe. I hadn't hit her. I reached her and swept her up into my arms, carried her to the side of the road. I could feel her small body trembling, shaken by silent sobs. I sat down right there holding that child, whispering those nonsense words we use to comfort babies. I thought I'd forgotten those magic words, but here I was crooning them to this child. She was so small, I thought about that at first. In the blaze of the headlights, all I'd registered was a child, limp blonde hair and huge terrified eyes. Now I realized she was tiny, no more than 3 or 4 years old, with that baby smell I remembered from my daughter's childhood. I carried on crooning and rocking her until she stopped sobbing and her little body relaxed. Then I asked, "What's your name, honey?" A soft, breathy voice whispered, "Mila." "Mila," I said gently, "where's your mommy?" "Mommy's gone. I woke up and mommy was gone." She was agitated again, I could tell, and on the verge of a fresh storm of sobs. "Listen to me, Mila," I said. "We'll find mommy. Where's your house?" The little body in my arms stirred with fresh purpose. "I'll show you," she said, and struggled to get loose from my arms and back on her feet. She took my hand and started leading me along the deserted street, past houses and gardens until we came to a Victorian cottage. Mila led me up the walkway to the porch. The door stood open and light poured out. I pushed the door open the rest of the way and called, "Hello, is anybody home?" Mila said, "Mommy's gone. I looked and called, but she's gone. She told Daddy she wanted to go away and now she's gone forever." "No, she hasn't," I told her firmly. "Mommy would never go without you." At those words, her tiny pinched face looked hopeful. Maybe Mommy had to go somewhere in a hurry. Mila looked up at me and her little mouth tried to smile. "Maybe." "I think you need to go back to bed and sleep," I said. "Where's your bedroom?" Mila led me upstairs to a bedroom painted pink and full of all the signs of a well-loved child. "Get into bed," I said. "I'll wait for your mommy downstairs." "No, please don't leave me alone," she whimpered. "I won't," I said gently, and I sat down on the chair next to her bed and held her hand until she fell asleep. I must have fallen asleep myself because I woke to loud voices and breaking crockery with a painful crick in my neck. I immediately checked on Mila. She was sleeping soundly, thank God, which told me the altercation downstairs was probably so common it didn't even wake the child up. I walked downstairs wondering how whomever it was could react to my presence in the house and the news that I'd slept in their child's bedroom. Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story. At the bottom of the stairs, I saw them. A woman and a man were standing there, and the breaking sound was evidently from a bottle of beer that had been flung at the wall. "You left her alone?" the woman screamed. "To buy beer?" That was when I stepped forward. "Excuse me, I'm Kirk Foster. I found your daughter in the middle of the road. It was a miracle I didn't run her over." The woman turned and stared at me with her mouth open. The man looked blank and more than a little drunk. "What are you doing in my house?" he screamed. "Get out!" The woman's reaction was completely different. "Mila," she gasped and pushed past me to run upstairs. The man took a threatening step towards me. "Get out," he said. "You trying to stir up trouble for me? I'll beat you in a pulp." But the woman was back, looking pale but composed. "You left her on her own and she was nearly run over. I nearly lost her." I could see an epic clash was in the offing, so I quietly edged my way over to the door and made my escape. I got into my car and drove away. I just had time for a shower and to change clothes before my first meeting. That night as I drove home, my mind went back to the child. I deliberately drove past the house. The lights were on and standing on the curb were Mila and her mother. The woman was struggling with a heavy suitcase. I stopped immediately and got out. "Hey, are you two okay?" The woman looked up at me in surprise. "Oh, you're the man who saved Mila. She told me you tucked her in and stayed with her. Thank you." "It's okay, it was the least I could do," I told her. "What's going on if you don't mind me asking?" "My husband kicked us out. A good thing, really. I'm gonna check us into a motel for the night." "Please," I said impulsively, "stay with me. I have a huge empty house. You and Mila can stay until you find a new place. I'm never home, so you'll have your privacy." "You mean that?" I could see where Mila had gotten her huge eyes from. I nodded and the woman smiled at me. "I'm Megan Toro." "Hi, Megan," I said. "I'm Kirk." I took Megan's suitcase and bags and put them in the trunk, then I drove them to my home. I settled Megan into the guest bedroom and Mila into my daughter's old room. That night I slept better than I had in a long time and woke to the sounds and smells of someone making breakfast. Megan and Mila were in the kitchen and I sat down to a delicious plate of scrambled eggs with bacon and mushrooms. I finally learned the whole story. Megan had met her husband in college. He'd been a football star and a big man on campus and she believed she was in love with him. The inevitable happened and Megan found herself pregnant at 21. She married the man and they both dropped out. Megan discovered that all-night drinking was more than a college pastime, it was his whole life. After Mila was born, Megan had gotten herself a job at a 24-hour convenience store, the night shift, which meant that the husband had to be there to babysit Mila during the night. He was far from reliable and would often duck out to buy cigarettes and beer. Megan would discover that he'd left the baby alone the next day when she'd found him passed out drunk on the couch when she'd made sure there was no alcohol in the house. Last night had led to the biggest row ever, and the former college football hero had kicked his wife and daughter out in a drunken rage. I listened quietly and I told Megan I was a lawyer and be happy to help her file for a divorce. As it turned out, the house was Megan's. She'd inherited it from her grandfather before her marriage, so I immediately filed to have Joe College evicted. This all took over 6 months, and during that time, Mila and Megan stayed with me. I'd never been happier. I woke up to the sounds of their voices and the smell of fresh coffee and joined them for breakfast and exciting conversations with Mila, who wanted to know everything and had 1,000 questions. I got used to them being there. I was home at 6 every evening so Megan could go to work, and tucked Mila in and told her a bedtime story before doing some work before bed. I got into the habit of waking up to greet Megan when she came home at 3 a.m. with a hot cup of tea. One night I realized that the little ritual was the best part of my day. I loved Mila, but I was in love with Megan. It was ridiculous, of course. I was decades older than Megan, who was only 26. My own daughter was 24. Still, when the divorce decree was passed and her ex-husband was evicted from her house, I was saddened. Megan and Mila moved out and I realized how lonely I'd been. They weren't far away, just 2 streets over, and I took to dropping in several times a week. Megan was transferred to the day shift, which made life easier for her and Mila. They didn't really need me anymore, but I needed them. I wanted to tell Megan how I felt, but each time I opened my mouth, I choked. So one day I sent her flowers, red roses. I thought she'd guess it was me, then I wouldn't have to say anything. I know from her reaction. When I visited that afternoon, Mila came running out, crying, "Kirk, Mommy's got a secret admirer." "A what?" I asked. She was so excited her eyes gleamed. "A secret admirer sent Mom red roses, lots of them," she explained, "but Mommy said she's not interested. Because—" "Mila," Megan cried, "what's that you're saying?" "I was just telling Kirk you don't want a secret admirer," she explained to her mother. Megan shook her head and explained, "Someone sent me roses. Honestly, I prefer wildflowers." "Oh, really?" I said. "I thought women liked roses, romantic and all that." Megan shook her head. "Not me, but forget the roses. Come on in, I made your favorite tea." The next day was a Saturday, so I got up at dawn and went out and picked a huge bunch of wildflowers. I parked down the street from Megan's house. I was gonna sneak in and leave it on the porch and she'd never know it was me. I just placed the flowers on the front doormat when I had the fright of my life. A voice screamed, "Mommy, Kirk is here." The door swung open and I found myself on my knees in front of Megan clutching the wildflowers, not quite what I'd been planning. "Kirk," Megan explained, "what on earth?" I knelt there looking up at her. My mouth was open but nothing was coming out, so I just handed her the flowers. Mila was staring at me saying, "Kirk is funny. His mouth's opening and closing but no noise comes out." "That's okay, Mila," Megan said. "I know what she wants to say." And then she bent down and took the flowers. "It's all right, Kirk. I love you too." Anyway, it wasn't long before I asked Megan to marry me and move back in with me. My only worry was my daughter. I didn't know how she'd feel about a stepmom only 2 years older, but she surprised me. "Dad, all that matters is your happiness," she said. "I'll never allow myself to ruin it because I love you." My daughter and Megan became friends and she fell in love with Mila immediately. After Megan and I were married, I adopted Mila and my daughter was delighted, and even more so when we announced that she'd have another sister just 2 years later.